In the biting cold of January 1836, within the unfinished walls of the Kirtland Temple, the prophet Joseph Smith received a vision that shattered the conventional understanding of life, death, and time itself. It was the evening of January 21st, and as the heavens were opened to his view, he did not merely see a static image of heaven with angels playing harps on clouds. He saw a dynamic, living, breathing continuation of existence. He saw his brother Alvin, who had died years prior, standing in the celestial kingdom. This vision was radical because it defied the theological logic of the day, but more importantly, it established a trajectory for the human soul that extends far beyond the grave. Joseph Smith saw what faith looks like not just at the moment of death, but what it looks like 100 years after death. He saw that the choices we make, the identity we forge, and the relationships we build do not evaporate when our hearts stop beating. They amplify. Today, we are going to walk through 5 specific truths, 5 distinct realities, that reveal what your life will look like 100 years after you die. These are not guesses. They are principles anchored in the revelations given to the prophet Joseph Smith and subsequent prophets who have seen beyond the veil. Most people live their lives with a 70-year perspective, worrying only about their retirement accounts, their current job security, or their physical health. While these things matter, they are temporary. The truths we will discuss today encompass the eternal perspective. Of these 5 truths, the third one is perhaps the most transformative because it completely redefines what you should be doing with your weekends right now. And the 5th truth, the one we will cover at the very end, is the one that 95% of believers theoretically know but rarely practice in a way that brings them peace. But first, I have a question for you. When you close your eyes and imagine yourself 100 years from today, what do you see? Do you see nothingness? Do you see a long, restful sleep? Or do you see a vibrant, active, working version of yourself, more alive than you are right now? The prophet Joseph Smith taught, "All your losses will be made up to you in the resurrection, provided you continue faithful." That is the promise. But the process of getting there involves understanding the mechanics of eternity. If you stick around until the end, you will have a blueprint not just for dying well, but for living with a power that echoes into the next century. This is about the long game. This is about the view from eternity. Let us begin with the first truth, which centers on the continuity of your personality and your relationships. We often fall into the trap of thinking that death is a magical car wash that scrubs away our personality quirks, our knowledge gaps, and our emotional attachments, leaving us as generic, glowing angels. This is not what Joseph Smith saw. The first truth is that that same sociality which exists among us here will exist among us there, only it will be coupled with eternal glory. This revelation, recorded in Doctrine and Covenants section 130, verse 2, is one of the most comforting yet demanding doctrines of the Restoration. It means that you are taking you with you. When Joseph Smith spoke at the funeral of King Follett in April 1844, he emphasized the eternal nature of the soul. He taught that the intelligence within us is co-eternal with God. It has no beginning and no end. This implies that the specific configuration of your character, your loves, your memories, your learned patience, and even your developed talents, persists. Death involves the separation of the spirit from the body, but it does not involve the separation of the spirit from its identity. If you are a person who loves music here, you will love music there. If you are a person who deeply cares about your family here, you will care about them there. The sociality Joseph mentioned refers to the quality of our relationships and the nature of our interactions. Consider the story of Sarah, a woman who lost her son Michael in a tragic car accident when he was just 22 years old. For months, Sarah was inconsolable, not just because of the loss, but because she feared that the vibrant, funny, intelligent young man she knew had been absorbed into some abstract, universal spirit. She feared he was no longer Michael. Then she read the teachings of Joseph Smith regarding the vision of the spirit world. She realized that Michael was still Michael. He still retained his humor, his love for his family, and his unique way of looking at the world. This truth transformed her grief. She realized that her relationship with him wasn't ended. It was merely interrupted by distance. She began to speak of him not in the past tense, but in the present tense. Michael is hardworking, not Michael was. This shift is crucial. The first truth demands that we build relationships and character traits now that we want to keep forever. If you are angry, bitter, or impatient now, death will not magically make you patient. You will wake up on the other side as an angry, bitter, impatient spirit, just without a physical body to express it. This is why the prophet Amulek warned in Alma 34:34 that same spirit which doth possess your bodies at the time that ye go out of this life, that same spirit will have power to possess your body in that eternal world. How does this apply to you today? It means that every book you read, every skill you master, and every relationship you nurture is a direct investment in your status 100 years from now. You are not just killing time, you are building your eternal self. When you understand this, you stop wasting time on trivial entertainment that numbs your mind, and you start seeking light and truth that expands your soul. You realize that the you of 2125 is being constructed by the choices of today. This leads us to the second truth, which is the principle of the echo effect, or the generational impact of righteous choices. Joseph Smith saw that the organization of the family was not a temporary earthly convenience but an eternal structure. In his visions of the sealing power, restored by Elijah in the Kirtland Temple, he understood that the links between generations are meant to be welded together. The second truth is that your faith today creates a reservoir of spiritual power that your descendants, or those you influence, will draw from 100 years after you are gone. We often think of our decisions as private. We think, if I skip my prayers, or if I cheat a little on my taxes, or if I indulge in this vice, it only hurts me. That is a lie. Joseph Smith taught that we are bound together. When he saw Alvin in the celestial kingdom, it was a revelation that the family unit is the vehicle of salvation. Your faithfulness creates a spiritual momentum. In Doctrine and Covenants 123:17, Joseph urged the saints to cheerfully do all things that lie in our power, and then may we stand still with the utmost assurance to see the salvation of God. That assurance echoes forward. Let me tell you about James. James was a man who grew up in a household defined by anger and addiction. His father was abusive, and his grandfather had been the same. When James joined the church and learned about the eternal nature of the family, he realized he stood at a crossroads. He could continue the cycle, or he could become a transitional character, someone who stops the poison from flowing to the next generation. James struggled. It was incredibly hard for him to learn patience and sobriety. But he did it. He fought for his faith every single day. Now, imagine the scene 100 years after James dies. His great-great-grandson is facing a temptation. Because of the culture of faith James established, the traditions of prayer, the reverence for covenants, the stories of overcoming, that great-great-grandson has a shield he doesn't even know he inherited. James's battle in 2024 won a victory for a child born in 2100. This is what Joseph Smith saw when he looked at the saints. He didn't just see a ragtag group of pioneers. He saw the roots of a mighty oak. He saw a people whose faith would populate the Rocky Mountains and spread to the earth. The practical application here is profound. You must view your life as a seed. Every act of repentance you engage in clears the path for those who follow. Every time you stand up for truth when it is unpopular, you make it slightly easier for your descendants to do the same. You are the ancestor of the future. The question is, what kind of ancestor will you be? Will you be the one they look back on and say, because she stayed faithful, we know the truth? Or will you be the broken link? The second truth is that your faith is not about you. It is about the dynasty of faith you are establishing for the centuries to come. Now, we arrive at the third truth. This is the one I told you would change everything. This is the big reveal. It challenges the popular cultural notion of rest in peace. The third truth is that the spirit world is not a place of idleness. It is a place of intense, organized, accelerated labor. Joseph Smith laid the foundation for this doctrine, and his nephew, President Joseph F. Smith, fully codified it in the vision recorded in Doctrine and Covenants section 138. The truth is this: 100 years after you die, you will likely be working harder than you ever worked in mortality, but it will be a work of pure joy and purpose. Most people imagine heaven as a long church service or a permanent vacation. But Joseph Smith saw a kingdom of order. He saw priests and priestesses. He saw organization. The work of the kingdom of God involves the redemption of all of God's children. Since billions have died without a knowledge of the gospel, the spirit world is effectively a massive missionary training center and a field of harvest. In D&C 138, we learn that the faithful elders and sisters continue their labors in the preaching of the gospel of repentance and redemption. Think about Maria. Maria was a faithful woman who spent much of her life doing family history and temple work. She often felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of names and the limitations of her time. She worried about all the people she couldn't help. But when she understood this third truth, her anxiety vanished. She realized that she wasn't just doing paperwork. She was collaborating with a team on the other side of the veil. She realized that when she passed on, she wouldn't stop doing this work. She would just be doing it from the other side of the desk. Instead of finding names, she would be finding the people attached to the names. This gave her a profound sense of purpose. She realized that her skills in teaching, her empathy, and her knowledge of the scriptures were professional qualifications for her post-mortal career. Why is this the most transformative truth? Because it completely changes how you view your retirement or your golden years here on earth. It changes how you view your education. If you knew you were being transferred to a new, critical job assignment in a foreign country next year, you would spend this year learning the language and studying the culture. Well, you are being transferred. You are preparing for a mission that will last for centuries. This truth shatters the idea that we are just waiting for the resurrection. We are not waiting, we are working. We are preparing the earth for the second coming from the other side of the veil. The prophet Joseph Smith declared, "The greatest responsibility in this world that God has laid upon us is to seek after our dead. This responsibility does not end when we die. It accelerates." Now, before we move to the fourth and fifth truths, and the fifth one is the one that most believers struggle to actually feel, I want to pause. We are halfway through this journey into eternity. We have discussed the continuity of your personality, the generational echo of your choices, and the intense labor of the spirit world. These are heavy, beautiful doctrines. They require a shift in perspective. I want to ask you to do something that helps this message reach others who are searching for this kind of depth. If you are finding value in this eternal perspective, please take a moment to click the like button. It tells the algorithm that this is content worth sharing. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and turn on the bell notification. We explore these deep doctrinal truths every week, and I don't want you to miss the next one. But more importantly, I want you to go to the comments section right now. Don't wait until the end, and answer this question. Which of the first three truths hit you the hardest? Was it the idea that you take your personality with you? The idea that your choices affect your great-grandchildren? Or the reality of the work that awaits you? Leave a comment. It helps me understand where you are in your spiritual journey, and it creates a community of seekers. This midpoint is crucial because the next two truths require you to open your heart even wider. We are moving from the what, work, and relationships to the who and the why. We are going to talk about your eternal identity and the perspective that makes suffering bearable. The veil between this life and the next is much thinner than we realize. Joseph Smith taught that the righteous spirits are not far from us, and know and understand our thoughts, feelings, and motions, and are often pained therewith. This means the audience for your life includes those who have gone before. It connects us back to that idea of sociality. So, as you comment and engage, remember that this isn't just an intellectual exercise. It is a remembrance of who we really are. Let us proceed to the fourth truth. This is the truth of eternal identity and pre-existence, viewed through the lens of postmortal clarity. Joseph Smith saw that 100 years after death, you will have fully remembered who you were before you came to this earth. In the King Follett Discourse, Joseph taught, "The mind or the intelligence which man possesses is co-equal with God himself. We are not beings who began at birth. We are ancient. We have histories that span eons before we ever took a breath of oxygen. In mortality, we suffer from a necessary amnesia. We forget our premortal stature so that we can walk by faith. But 100 years after death, that veil is gone. You will look back at your earthly life not as your whole existence, but as a brief, critical mission. You will remember the covenants you made before this world was framed. You will remember your relationship with your heavenly parents. This restoration of memory changes the context of everything. Consider David. David was a man who felt insignificant his whole life. He was physically small, he had a stutter, and he worked a janitorial job that people often looked down upon. He felt invisible. He struggled with feelings of worthlessness. But one day, while reading Doctrine and Covenants 93, where it states man was also in the beginning with God, David felt a piercing impression. He realized that the David the world saw was a temporary disguise. The real David was a son of God with a royal heritage. He realized that in the spirit world, his stutter would be gone, his stature would be majestic, and his station would be determined by his faithfulness, not his paycheck. When you die and cross that threshold, you reintegrate with your ancient self. You will likely look at the trials that seem so huge here, the financial worries, the social anxieties, the rejections, and you will smile at them much like a college graduate smiles at the worries of kindergarten. You will see that you were far more capable than you gave yourself credit for. The fourth truth is that you are a being of immense power and glory in embryo. Joseph Smith said that if we could see a soul in its true eternal state, we would be tempted to fall down and worship it. 100 years after death, you will be living in the reality of that majesty. The application of this truth is simple but difficult. You must treat yourself and others with the dignity of their eternal identity. C.S. Lewis, who grasped this concept well, famously said, "There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. If you truly believe this, if you truly believed that the person cutting you off in traffic or the person looking back at you in the mirror is an ancient, eternal being, how would that change your behavior? You would walk with a different kind of confidence. You would not be easily offended. You would possess a quiet dignity that the world cannot give and cannot take away." And finally, we arrive at the fifth truth. This is the one that 95% of people struggle to understand because our pain feels so permanent. The fifth truth is the small moment perspective. When Joseph Smith was rotting in Liberty Jail, freezing, betrayed, and terrified for his people, he cried out to God, "O God, where art thou?" The answer he received in Doctrine and Covenants 121 and 122 contains the key to the 100-year view. The Lord told him, "My son, peace be unto thy soul. Thine adversity and thine afflictions shall be but a small moment." A small moment? It didn't feel small, felt endless, felt unbearable. But the fifth truth is that 100 years after death, your most agonizing trial on earth will look like a small moment. This is not to minimize your pain. It is to maximize your context. Joseph Smith saw that the scales of eternity are balanced differently than the scales of mortality. He taught that God hath not revealed anything to Joseph, but what he will make known unto the 12, and even the least saint may know all things as fast as he is able to bear them. Part of knowing all things is understanding the ratio of time to eternity. Let me share the story of Elena. Elena was an elderly woman who lived with chronic, debilitating pain for the last 30 years of her life. She was bedridden. Her body was a prison. It would have been easy for her to become bitter, to ask, "Why me?" But Elena cultivated the long view. She would often say, "I have been alive for eternity, and I will be alive for eternity. This 30 years is just a bad night in a cheap hotel." She wasn't dismissing the pain. She was contextualizing it. She understood that 100 years after her death, she would be free, vibrant, and that the patience she developed in that bed would be a crown of glory upon her head. She knew that the scar tissue of her spirit would become her strength. The fifth truth teaches us that our current suffering is doing something for us, not just to us. D&C 122:7 continues, "And then, if thou endure it well, God shall exalt thee on high." The "if" is the hinge upon which eternity turns. The 100-year view reveals that the only tragedy is not the suffering itself, but failing to learn from it. In the spirit world, we will look back on our trials with gratitude. We will see them as the gymnasiums where our spiritual muscles were torn down so they could be built back stronger. We will see the intricate design of God's hand in the very things we thought were abandonments. So, how do we take these 5 massive, cosmic truths and apply them to a Tuesday morning when the alarm goes off, the kids are screaming, and you're late for work? We need a practical application plan. We cannot just nod our heads at deep doctrine. We must walk it out. First, I invite you to conduct a generational audit. This week, take 1 hour to sit down and write about your life, but do it for an audience of 100 years from now. Write a letter to your great-great-grandchild. Tell them what you believe. Tell them what you fought for. Tell them about a mistake you made and how you repented. This exercise forces you to articulate your values and creates a tangible record of your faith. It engages the second truth, the echo effect. Don't just leave them money. Leave them a map. Second, engage in morning alignment. Before you check your phone, before you let the world rush in, take 2 minutes to remind yourself of your eternal identity. Truth number 4. Stand in front of the mirror and say, I am an eternal being with a mission to perform. It sounds simple, perhaps even silly, but it resets your neurochemistry and your spiritual bearing. It reminds you that you are not just a body. You are a spirit in charge of a body. Third, prepare for your future career. Truth number 3. Choose one skill this month that will be useful in the spirit world. Maybe it's learning how to listen better. Maybe it's studying the scriptures with the intent to teach, not just to read. Maybe it's doing a specific piece of family history work. Actively tell yourself, I am training for my post-mortal mission. This gives meaning to the mundane. When you are patient with a difficult coworker, you are learning the diplomacy of heaven. Fourth, practice the small moment visualization. Truth number 5. When you hit a wall of stress or pain this week, stop. Close your eyes. Fast forward 100 years. Visualize yourself looking back at this moment. Ask yourself, will this matter in the celestial kingdom? If the answer is no, let it go. If the answer is yes, then ask, what am I supposed to learn from this? This reframing technique instantly lowers anxiety and increases spiritual capacity. Let's recap what we have discovered today. We have journeyed through the mind and visions of Joseph Smith to see what faith looks like from the vantage point of a century past death. First, we learned about the continuity of self. You are taking your personality, your memories, and your relationships with you. Death changes your location, not your character. Second, we explored the generational echo. Your choices today are the inheritance of tomorrow. You are the architect of your descendants' spiritual environment. Third, we revealed the great work. The spirit world is a place of accelerated labor. You are not retiring. You are being promoted to a vast field of souls who need your light. Fourth, we uncovered your eternal identity. You are an ancient being finding your way back to your royal status. You are more powerful and significant than you can currently comprehend. Fifth, we embraced the small moment perspective. All suffering is temporary and educational. The long view turns tragedies into triumphs and patience into power. The central message of all these truths is this: you are currently living in the first act of an epic that never ends. The you that exists 100 years after death is being sculpted by the you that is watching this video right now. Joseph Smith didn't just see angels. He saw you in your future state. He saw the potential for glory that resides in every human soul. So, the invitation is clear. Do not live for the weekend. Do not live for retirement. Live for eternity. Make choices today that the 100 years from now version of you will thank you for. Forgive that person, not because they deserve it, but because you don't want to carry that luggage for another century. Learn that doctrine not to pass a test, but to equip your mind for its future work. Serve that neighbor, not for praise, but to build the bond of sociality that will outlast the grave. If this eternal perspective has shifted something in you today, if it has given you a glimpse of your own future, then I ask you to share this video with someone who needs hope. Share it with someone who is grieving, or someone who feels lost in the mundane. Help them see the long view. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so we can continue this journey through the restoration of truth together. And remember to leave that comment about which truth impacted you most. The prophet Joseph Smith saw the end from the beginning. He saw that death is not a wall but a door. And he saw that, on the other side of that door, the faithful are not sleeping. They are marching. They are working. They are living with a fire and a joy that we can only begin to imagine. The choice is yours. Will you sleepwalk through mortality, or will you wake up to your eternal destiny? I pray you choose to wake up.